is with thinking through your priorities. What is it that you want out of your career, and what do you want out of your family life, and what do you want out of your one crack at your kids' childhoods?
And whose team is this? Is this your team, or is this your daddy's team?
Thanks for listening to Dad Mode Podcast, common sense parenting in a politically correct world. Here's your host, Andy Carlson.
Welcome back to the Dad Mode Podcast, common sense parenting in a politically correct world. I'm your host, Andy Carlson, at Andy Carlson Show on the Twitter machine. I'm a father, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but you don't either. There, squirt. So let's try and learn something together today. The website is dadmodepod.com, Twitter at dadmodepod, or use the hashtag dadmode, and we'll get at you, dog. And we're joined today by Dr. Scott Behson. He's on the Twitter machine at Scott Behson, B-E-H-S-O-N. He's professor of management at Fairleigh Dickinson University. He's got a blog, fathersworkandfamily.com, and also the main reason, the manifesto why he's here. The book is The Working Dad Survival Guide, How to Succeed at Work and at Home, available on Amazon now. Scott, how the heck are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here.
Now, what did you think about the intro? Was it too flowery, not flowery enough?
No, that's great.
All right. All right. So, Dr. Scott, Dr. Beeson, what should you prefer?
Scott, please. Scott.
Right.
I'm not one of those PhD people who needs to be like Dr. Evil, he's like, I didn't spend 5 years in evil medical school to be called Mr. Evil, but no, I'm happy to be called Scott.
The academia people with the tweed jackets with the leather patches on the elbows.
I have this one colleague. He has 12 initial things at the end of his name.
Oh my God.
And he insists on all of it, and it drives me crazy. And I'm like, no, please call me Scott. I'm just a person.
All right, Scott. Before we hop into the book and the various topics there, why don't we get your story about your profession, your becoming a family man, and everything that led to kind of where you are today.
Sure. So, I'm a business school professor, and I teach things like human resources and workplace flexibility, and have a specialty kind of in work-family issues. And when I started my research and study and working with companies on this about 15 years ago, so much of the work on things like work and family balance and on workplace flexibility was all oriented towards like, how do we retain working women who are dealing with this issue? Mm-hmm. And it always kind of struck me that, hey, wait, dads are parents too, and we struggle with this too. It became personal for me about 10 years ago when I became a dad. So I was able to see it both from kind of a professional point of view and a personal point of view. And, for me, listen, I'm a college professor, which is a really sweet gig. There's like 20 hours a week I need to be at a particular place to do my job. And otherwise, the rest of my stuff I could do kind of wherever, whenever. And, and even with me, with this really sweet gig, balancing work and family sometimes is really hard. And I know I have it much easier than most dads. So basically, I'm as professor kind of doing academic-y writing and stuff in this area. And then about 3 years ago, I'm like, this is dumb. I'm talking to the same 100 professors who also do this stuff. So I started a blog. I was like, I want to get this information out to actual people who can actually use it and be helped by it. And then that led me, a couple years later to writing this book, where, it's kind of has, it's a little bit based in research, a little bit based in what companies do and what research shows, but really so much more of it is, from a man-to-man point of view. Hey, working dad, you're not alone. We all care about our careers. We all care about putting in the time and work to be very involved, good dads. Here's some advice that can help. It's, and based on interviews with dozens of dads, some of whom figured some things out, some of whom really struggle, some personal stories and self-assessment exercises and stuff like that. Really trying to give advice and encouragement to my fellow kind of working dad.
Now, it's kind of funny that the book's coming out, today in our society, whereas, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was all about, the working mom having it all, the whole Murphy Brown thing. And then even before that, dad's role in the family was to take the train to the city, work for 8 hours, take the train back, and then come back and smoke a pipe and have a cognac, and then the kids will be off to bed. And that's it. He's the breadwinner.
Right.
And now it's that's also a hot button term, but gender roles are sort of shifting where you do see a lot more, especially young families, where the wife can be the breadwinner and the dad is taking more of an active role in parenting. And then you also have families where both parents are working, and there has to be some sort of balance in there, otherwise both parents get eaten up.
Yeah, I mean, the most common arrangement is that you got both parents working. And that means, not only do you care about your own career, you're supporting your spouse's career, and still all the things that have to get taken care of to run a household have to get taken care of, right? Kids still need to get to their stuff, and houses need to get cleaned, and the whole works. And actually, the research shows that dads today work as much as they ever have, but also do 3 times as much childcare and twice as much housework. And in large part, that's due to this, dual income couples. And I know, that, gender roles and blah, blah, blah is, kind of, delves into kind of politically correct stuff. But, the fact is gender roles, like, dads just being the provider and the authority figure, that constrains dads, and it kind of keeps us in one little box. And I think it's a good thing that, anybody, a dad or a mom, can be the kind of parent that they're best at or that best suits them, right? And if that means being very career oriented, awesome, go for it. Be that, be that kind of dad. Just make sure your family's getting what they need. But if it suits you and your style to be a little bit closer to your kids, or, not quite the distant authority figure, but more of a hands-on everyday kind of dad, then we should be free to do that. And there's no one best way. It should be based on what our priorities are and what our families need. Now,
the whole traditional, back in the 50s sort of gender roles. Now, in what ways with your family personally have you sort of crossed lines? Are you a good cook? Are you good at cleaning the house?
Right. Yeah, well, listen, my dad was a great dad and very hands-on, very involved, and I'd be happy if I'm half the dad, he was. He was just awesome dad. But there's a lot of things I do in my daily life he never did. He occasionally barbecued, or, he did pancakes once a month, and it was a big deal. I cook every day. He was working. My mom took care of most of the child care kind of stuff, the diapers and the feedings and the this and the that. But that's something that I, really shared kind of 50-50. And, my dad was awesome at everything he was expected to do. But, I face a different set of expectations. And I think dads of our generation, kind of face that, right? Where, we're still expected to do what dads have always done, but there's also more that we're expected to do. And that's why it's a difficult time. One of the quotes I have in the book from, I don't know if you read anything by Michael Lewis. He's one of my favorite authors.
Moneyball,
Blindside.
Yep.
Well, he wrote a memoir about fatherhood about, 15 years ago, or less than that. And, but he said, this is we're in the dark ages of fatherhood. Dads of last generation, they knew what was expected of them. Dads of the next generation will know what's expected of them. But, dads today, some of us look at us like we're super dads, and other people look at us like we're complete slacker Neanderthals who should help our wives more. And, there's no standard for what it means to be a good dad, which again is one of the reasons why I wanted to write the Working Dad Survival Guide, because, our role models, our dads did it differently. And I think I think every dad I know cares a lot about their careers and work and being a good provider, but also really wants to be a hands-on involved dad. And, that's a tough challenge. And again, if not all of us have role models and see other people kind of succeeding in this, because the media sure doesn't show it, it's important to get some advice and encouragement that we know we can be successful, both working and at home.
Now, when you're busy being a professor or when you're writing this book, did you ever find that you were getting too one-sided to the work side?
Like me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, this was well actually, it turned out I got my book deal in December, and typically it takes well over a year to get a book turned around. But my publisher and I, when we talked, we were like, we really want to get this book out by Father's Day, which is insane. But it meant I had to write the book in about 2 months, and I did miraculously, and I did this with the Christmas and New Year's in between, and I went skiing with my family over New Year's, and we had holidays, and so I really tried to practice what I preached a little bit in terms of making sure to carve out time for life and family. But knowing that this was kind of a temporary thing. It's going to be 2 months of pretty extreme work, in addition to my regular job. We were able to work around it. And, I think it's okay. I think most people who are ambitious in their careers, I think we all understand that, like, being occasionally overworked is part of the deal. That's okay. The problem is when you're chronically overworked, when every week is a 60, 70-hour week. And that's when it really kind of eats into your time, into your energy and stuff like that. And, this leads to another thing. A lot of times when people think about work-family balance, we think about like walking on a tightrope where if things aren't perfectly balanced, like everything falls apart. That's not the best way to look at it. I think, if we look at it like a balanced diet, we know that, we eat too much ice cream one week, we can make up for it by eating salads the next week. And this also, and the same thing happens with work. Some weeks, you got to be all in for work. Other times, there's a family thing and, work has to go by the wayside and you have to pay attention to other things, and that's okay. And also there's lots of different foods, right, to be healthy. It's not just work and family, it's also taking care of ourselves, making sure we have time for us and our friends and for us as a couple and for ourselves and exercise and, religion or whatever else is an important part of your life.
Now, it's kind of weird because if a man focuses too much on his work, he's considered a workaholic and he's ignoring his family and whatnot. Or if there's too much family time and he's still a professional, colleagues will think he's just lazy. There goes Dave again, just taking off every night and weekend and not truly grinding. He's not really committed to the cause. Now, you talk about balance, and it does seem like a tightrope at times, but I feel like once you get into a solid pattern of balancing both, it becomes just like a wide, nice little breezeway you're walking down.
Oh, I like that.
You can take that. Yeah,
no, that's cool. I'll take the breezeway metaphor. I think you're right that, I think there's a couple things. One, and this is where I start the book is with thinking through your priorities. What is it that you want out of your career? And what do you want out of your family life? And what do you want out of your, one crack at your kids' childhoods? And then start making decisions that maybe get you there over time. And we have to worry less about what other people think. I think, that's a big problem, right? I mean, moms feel this more than dads, I think, where a lot of moms feel this pressure to be like the perfect mother or the perfect parent. And it's nuts. And dads feel the same kind of thing sometimes, especially in the workplace where it's not safe to kind of out yourself as like an involved father sometimes. So I think it's, kind of figuring out your own priorities and then, assessing your situation. And that's what I try to do in the next part of the Working Dad Survival Guide is, in the workplace, how can we navigate the workplace? How can we advocate for ourselves? How can we understand what opportunities might be there that we can work more flexibly? Or what obstacles are in our way and what we could do about them. Because, the fact is, you can't, I hate that expression, you can have it all, because you can't, we're adults. There are trade-offs. You want to be the CEO of a company, you're not picking up your kids for tennis at 3:30. But, if you scale back your career, you're also, you can't afford some of the things you'd otherwise be able to afford. And you have to be okay with those.
To be a CEO and have a yacht, or to be a senior VP and have your kids know your name.
Right. I mean, and I think you summed it up really well. It's not the poorhouse or the penthouse, right? I mean, I think it's, what do we think our definition of success is, right, in our careers and in our family lives? And then how do we work towards those? And I think that, obviously, listen, we have to earn money, right? So, that's a constraint, and there's only so much time, and that's a constraint. But, I think, again, it might take you 6 months, 2 years, to start, working your way to where you want to go. But it could be just 1 or 2 quick changes that you make this week that make all the difference too. And I try to talk about both of those issues. Like, for example, this one guy, he found that his family time, his time with his family, everybody was just looking at their screens and not really spending time together.
Yeah.
Sure, we can all relate to this, right?
Yep.
So he implemented no screen hours, 6 till 8 at home for everybody. And at first his teenagers hated it and he hated it. But it got them off the habit of being in front of their computers or holding their iPads or their phones. And for those 2 hours, they have to be together. And now that's like family time that they really can use to bond. And, that's a small little change. That can make a big difference. Other times it's bigger changes, maybe choosing a different career path or, trying to find an employer who's a little more flexible. But sometimes it's like little things too.
Now, those are a couple examples from the book. What was your favorite story, or the guy who, in your opinion, had it most figured out?
Well, wow. Well, my favorite story from the book might not be the guy who has it all figured out, but my favorite story in the book is, he's a guy, he was a childhood friend of mine, and now he is like total high-flying executive at a major international financial firm. And he always put in 60, 70-hour weeks and still does. But when his daughter was very little, he felt like he was missing too much. And so he really thought long and hard about his career, but before he did anything drastic, he just went to his boss, and people didn't really do this at his workplace then. He went to his boss and said, "Is there anything we could do about this? I have an idea. How about on Wednesdays, I come in at 1 o'clock and, I'll work into the night and everything, but I'll have the day." And he wound up having daddy-daughter Wednesdays with his little girl. Yeah. Every Wednesday, it was just the two of them every Wednesday for like 3-4 hours straight. And that was one time during the week, all through her preschool years, that they had together. And for him, that made all the difference because now, he feels very tight and connected with his daughter. But also, he maintained his work reputation. He felt really nervous about just doing this kind of small accommodation to his work life. But the fact is, if you're a really good employee, most of the time you could get a little bit of slack, and then people don't care as long as you continue to be a really good employee. So I think his story is great because of the family side, but it's also great because the work side, that even if you're ambitious and want to have a big career, you can find kind of informal or smaller ways to just make sure you get enough family time. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm telecommuting 2 days a week, or I'm taking a big parental leave or anything like that. Sometimes it could be a smaller accommodation. So I really love that story. There's actually one other story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, fire.
It was talking about like getting common interests with your kids, because family time can't just be, being in the same room. It needs to be kind of like, hey, what are we doing together, right? And this guy has 2 daughters. And they're totally like into princesses and stuff. And well, he's not.
Yeah.
But his quote is like, "I never thought I'd be the guy going to Frozen on ice, but there I am, because it makes them really happy and they need this, and I need to get into their stuff, at least somewhat, in order to be with them and give them what they need." And he did say that getting them into tennis and punk rock was going very well too. But
there you go.
But you have to meet your kids where they are and get interested at least in some of their interests, so you can have common interests.
So like you said, it's not about having it all. There is compromises, and they're probably still a little too young for Breaking Bad or The Wire.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the world would be better if kids didn't like watch Frozen 1,000 times. I totally agree.
I'm actually installing a frozen boycott in our household. I don't know if the wife will go for it. But all right, so let's hop into like the big hot button topic that seems to come up, and it definitely hit close to home because we just had our first daughter a month ago, and the wife got.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. The wife got 8 weeks of paid maternity leave, and the United States is still so lacking, or not say lacking, just behind the rest of the world as far as maternity leave, and also paternity leave is basically non-existent. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, we're one of 2 countries in the entire world who don't have some sort of mandated paid maternity leave. The other being Papua New Guinea.
Economic powerhouse, Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. So, listen, I mean, I don't think we need to be kind of like a Northern European, Swedish socialist welfare state, right? But I don't think there's little reason we can't, have similar policies to like the UK or Australia or Canada or Germany in this regard, where at least there's a couple weeks with wage replacement for people, both moms and dads. In terms of paternity leave, we're completely dependent on our employer for this. And only about 14% of private employers have paid paternity leave, which I think is a real shame. I didn't really exactly have a paternity leave, but my son was born right after final exams in the spring semester, which was really nice. And I just decided not to do, I worked ahead so that I could have the summer. And so I kind of got a paternity leave, and it was really transformative for me. I had never changed a diaper or fed a baby before. And that stuff's actually not that hard once you kind of do it like 10, 15 times, but, it was about bonding with my kid, but also my wife and I learning how to be parents together. So that like, I felt very confident. She felt very confident in me, so she could take breaks. It doesn't have to all fall to her. We could really share, in being the primary parent going forward. And that was really important for our family and setting up a really good dynamic that my wife can go back to work. And she knows I have it covered, or if I have to travel, I know she has it covered. And, that really started then with having paternity leave. But getting back to your initial question, a lot of companies will have, a policy on the books for like 2 weeks or something like that. So first off, my advice to dads is find out what your options are. Maybe your company has a policy that's just been sitting on a shelf somewhere. And you may as well make them dust it off and be the pioneer and use it. Because ultimately your career is 40, 50 years long, and 2-3 weeks isn't going to derail anything. If we think about it long term. But also there's a couple other options. If your company offers only maternity leave, you might legally have a right to at least some of that. Most maternity leave has 2 parts. One for like physical recovery, and then another for like care and bonding. And if your employer's maternity leave is mostly care and bonding and not so much just recovery from childbirth, and oh my God, thank goodness we don't have to go through that. There is no reason, and in fact, they'd be discriminating based on gender if they don't offer, that care and bonding part of the leave to also to adoptive parents and to new dads.
Oh, yes.
So, there's a lot. I mean, I hate to be in legislation culture here or legal lawsuit culture here, but there's been a lot of movement legally on this where dads are standing up for paternity leave. So I think we're going to see some progress, and we're seeing progress anyway.
So you're saying this is the first time like the anti-sexism equality of the genders is working in the man's favor.
Yeah.
Baby.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not the first time, but yeah, I mean, this is something that, that if you think about it, this is a place where, when it comes to being supported as a father, this is something that society doesn't support, it's something that should be fairer. I completely agree.
Now, you were on the CBS morning show after Mike Francesa.
Yes.
You being a New York guy, it's obviously close to home. When he had his thoughts about paternity leave being like, what do you say, a sham or a scam or something like that?
It's like, what do do you do? The wife's taking care of everything. It's a vacation. And I'm like, well, no, maybe for you. Yeah, but what you're talking about, Daniel Murphy, who's on the Mets, was one of like about 130 now baseball players who have taken 3-day paternity leaves, which is a policy that baseball has had since 2011. But he did it on opening day, and I guess it was slow news in New York. So, Francesa and Boomer Esiason actually on his show kind of said similar things. And it became like this huge national media story, which was really weird to me. But the good news was most people like really supported Daniel Murphy in this and said, no, this is important. A couple days is not too much to ask. So it became a big story. But I think the good part was that most people started recognizing, maybe for the first time, that, hey, yeah, dad should have at least a little bit of paternity leave.
Well, it wasn't that big of a deal since, especially with baseball, it was early on in the season. But even if it was late in the season, the Mets probably wouldn't be contending anyways.
Well, that's true, but that's a little beside the point, right? Actually, what's rather interesting is about later that season, the Brewers were they were in the wild card chase towards the end of the season, and guess what? Ryan Braun, who of course is not a good guy, took 3-day paternity leave during that stretch. And you know what? It was not a big national story, and nobody said much about it. So it's rather interesting. Sometimes, some stories get very big for some weird reason, and other stories get.
Well, if someone would have called Braun on it, he would have just thrown the urine collector under the bus.
He might have. Yes. There
you go.
Yep.
Now, what is a fatherhood network?
Oh, okay. So, the towards the end of the book, in the Working Dad Survival Guide, I have a section about taking care of yourself, and one big part of this, I think, is taking care of yourself socially. I know my wife is always trying to kick me out of the house because I don't get enough time out, and there are bad dads out there who neglect their duties, but they're not listening to this podcast or reading my book. So most of us, if we're working full time or more than full time and doing what we need to do as dads, we don't get a lot of social time. So one of the things I recommend is find some local dads who are in a similar situation to you, and just get together every now and then. And so we have this tradition in my neighborhood, in my neighbor's yard. We call it beer fire.
Hey, I like the sound of that already.
And it's a little bit, again, getting away from Frozen for a little while, or Bubble Guppies, or whatever, tea parties. Getting together with some guys, and we sit around one of those backyard fire pit things with a cooler of beer. And, it's once every month or so, and it's about 10 guys, and we're all from the neighborhoods, and most of our kids know each other. And, basically we just hang out, and it's good for social reasons, right? Just to hang out. But also it's, we talk about sports and cars and women sometimes, but, we're going to gravitate towards what we share in common, right? Which is, hey, this is what my job, this is the frustration I have at my job right now, or, oh my God, this is happening with my kid, or, I had this conversation with my wife, and we, not that it's a support group or anything, but
therapy.
No, it's not group therapy, but it's just organically, we're going to talk about the things that are common concerns. So, it's fun, it's relaxing, but we could also help each other a little bit. So I encourage my readers to try to buddy up either at the workplace, have a happy hour every couple of weeks with, 5 to 8 dads who are in a similar situation to you, or if your neighborhood has a lot, go for that. If not, there are city dads groups in 19 cities around the country. I also tell the story in the book of this one guy who he and a bunch of local dads, they go to the opening night of all the superhero movies together.
Nice.
And that's just their little tradition. And they call themselves the dorky dads. I mean, that's their words. So it doesn't have to be super cool or anything, but it could be a poker night or going bowling or just making sure you have a little bit of social time. That's, the world, when you're a parent of young kids especially, you can get, I don't know, I don't want to say this too strongly, but it's a little bit of a feminized kind of world, right? Tea parties and diapers and, soft blues and baby stuff. I think we need a little bit of a masculine counter programming sometimes.
So what you're saying, Fight Club.
Well, wow, yeah, I'm too much of a wimp for Fight Club myself.
Well, no, we can't talk about it.
Right. You know what the third rule of Fight Club is?
What is that?
Bring cupcakes.
Oh, that would make it a lot better.
Yeah.
So
first rule, yeah. Okay. Anyway, but that's my lame Fight Club joke. No. So I mean, but Fight Club came out of a need, right? For whoever the Ed Norton character to feel more alive and feel more like a man. And I don't say we have to go that far, but we don't want to blow up a city or anything, but we need a little bit of a haven for ourselves and for our social needs. And I think it's okay to say, listen, it's like what they say on the airplane. You have to put your oxygen mask on, and then you can help other people with theirs. And having some time with the guys, I think, is an important part of taking care of yourself so you can take care of other people.
You ever seen the movie What to Expect When You're Expecting?
No.
All right, so
dear God, no.
It's one of the wife's favorite movies, and I'll be honest, there's some entertaining parts, but there's a group of dads that get together. They're like a stroller mafia, and It's led by Chris Rock, and there's just like 4 or 5 dads that get together, and I think they're in Atlanta with the giant park down there, and then they just walk. Now, you can tell it's kind of their support group, and then they blow off steam about their wives. I think one of the dads, the kid's name is Henri, except he wants to call him Henry, that old thing.
Okay.
Except the wife insists on Henri.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, besides like brick and mortar support groups of fellow dads, what are some other resources that working fathers can reach out to?
Well,
and besides the book.
Oh, besides my book.
Yeah.
Well, first off, my book, which you should buy on Amazon.com, The Working Dad Survival Guide. But besides that, we're talking about this issue much more. I mean, this podcast being one exhibit of this. But I think, we're finally recognizing a little bit that, dads, face a real challenge, a real tough challenge of providing and being good in our careers, and also, really wanting to be really involved dads. So there's a lot more out there. I mentioned before the City Dads groups. I'm a member of the New York City Dads group, and I don't go to a ton of their stuff, but they have some dads nights out, happy hours and stuff like that just for dads. They have some other things that are like for dads and kids, like they'll all meet up at a playground at a certain day and a certain time, or they'll get like, block of tickets to the latest Pixar movie for dads and their kids, things like that. And then also they have like these new dad boot camps where they get like people who are about to become dads will go, but it's run by people who dads of like 1 year or less kids. So the veteran dads just have young kids themselves, and it's really just kind of talking about the transition to becoming a dad. Usually the veteran dads bring their babies, and then they just have the other dads hold them during the sessions. But they talk about things like work-family balance and dealing with in-laws and dealing with, maybe, the wife kind of pushing them out of the way and trying to do everything herself, which happens in a lot of families. And how to, transition to fatherhood. So there's a lot of that support. And there are 19 cities around the country. I'm not sure if there's one in Minnesota or Minneapolis, but there are 19 different cities, so you could find them pretty easy if you live in one of these areas. But I would say, the books by Armin Brott, if you're really looking at the parenting side of it, he's really good about that. It's a relatable man-to-man advice. It's not what to expect when you're expecting or what to expect the first year. But I think the most important thing to do for support is to talk about your own situation. I know it's manly to be like strong and silent and to not admit that you struggle with something. But, I think if we talk about this with some of our fellow dad friends, or even talk about it with our wives or other people in our lives, you'll find that a lot of people are very sympathetic. There's a weird wall of silence around fatherhood, and we need to kind of break that down.
So it's not like the old way where you keep your feelings down, and then you just smoke 2 packs a day, and then you die of a heart attack at 45.
Right. Well, we'd rather prevent that, right? Yeah. So
that's how Daddy went.
Right. I mean, we don't want to be, we don't have to be like Phil Donahue or anything, but I think it's important to be like, I mean, I need to talk about this, or I need to share ideas and strategies with somebody else. Maybe, my dad, that guy around the corner I see at the bus stop, maybe he has an idea of how I could help limit screen time, or what I should do about my son's allowance. So it could even just be small things like that make a big difference.
Now, in the last section of your book, you had a line that I really liked, and got paraphrased here, but it's attention on working fathers is picking up speed. Now, how do you think the landscape of how we approach working fathers and working mothers, for that matter, in let's say a decade down the line?
Well, I think there'll be huge progress. I mean, we're not having this conversation 10 years ago, so already just getting to this point is really progress. But the thing is, I've seen again. I participated in this thing last summer called the White House Summit for Working Families, and there were CEOs of major companies, male CEOs, talking about, first off, their own work-family challenges, and secondly, how they're starting to try to get their companies to move on this. And a lot of really big companies, and ones you wouldn't expect, like Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and Ernst & Young and these very high pressure workplaces, they're really struggling with this because they're losing so many good employees when they get to their prime parenting years in their mid 30s.
Well, I mean, taking government bailout money, it takes a lot of work hours. Take some time away from the kiddos.
Yeah, but the rank and file employees who are putting in the 65-hour weeks, they're figuring out, hey, I've been working at Bank of America and I'm working my butt off, but now I don't have enough time to be a good dad, so I'm going to find, still a good job, but something else that doesn't require travel and 70-hour weeks. So these big companies are they're not doing it to be nice, but they're figuring out they're losing too many good people. So a lot of them have really started implementing really good policies around workplace flexibility, about paternity leave, and so there's progress. I think that we're going to see there's much more equality in terms of women in the workplace, and I think the only way we're really going to get equality in the workplace is if we get equality at home too, and we respect dads as much as we respect moms, and give them as much credit and recognition as moms get. So so that'll change. I mean, the fact is, most PTAs, which used to be 95% women, are now about 75% women. So things are changing slowly. Listen, I just think I'd rather see both men and women be able to really live their priorities more. And whether that means, a very career-driven woman, that's awesome. If it's a very family-oriented guy, that's great. If someone has more traditional priorities, that's awesome too. Just, as long as we understand where we are. The trick is, too many of us drift through life, right? Like we got on a path 20 years ago or 15 years ago out of college with our careers, and then we don't think about it anymore. And our career might not fit our family life 15 years down the road, but we stay with it because we don't think about it. And if the one lesson I hope people get from the Working Dad Survival Guide really is, don't drift, make conscious choices, really think through, like, what do I want? What do my kids need? And what? Your kids need time with you probably more than they need yet another video game or yet another thing that'll get thrown away. And, what do I want out of life? Do I want to, again, smoke 2 packs a day and die early of a heart attack because I'm so stressed out at work?
American dream.
Or do I want, a more well-balanced life? And whatever you decide is fine. But, making conscious choices is the important part. And what I really try to do in the book is, again, have people think through their priorities, and I kind of guide them through some self-assessment exercises. And then think about the workplace and where you are, and think about your home life and where you are, and how can you make some of those decisions that can lead you to a life that's kind of more balanced.
Beautiful. And just to bring it home on a personal note, the wife and I had this discussion when we were expecting our first child, and I work from home. I'm independent. I'm an entrepreneur. Have a bunch of ventures, irons in the fire, and the wife works out of the home, and I'm actually going to be a stay-at-home father for the first couple of years until the daughter goes off to preschool and stuff, and I'm really looking forward to it. And it's a time that my job flexibility is at a place where I have the freedom where I can make that choice, because I know, a lot of young fathers that are my friends and my peers don't really have that, since they're stuck working a 9 to 5, and it came down to a conscious decision where it's like I can kind of ease back a little bit when she's young, but when she gets older and the other kids get older, out of high school or out of the nest even, then you can really start picking the ball back up again, because that's the beautiful thing about being independent.
Yeah, and I think that's really wise. And the other thing is, careers are really long. And I think sometimes people forget that. Like,
and there's a lot of acts.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you could slow down for a few years, as you're talking about, or shift how you work for a few years. And then, maybe you don't get exactly back on the same track that you did before, but I think you're thinking through it and you're making conscious choices, and that's really the big step. Just to relate my personal story, again, I kind of have this cushy job as a college professor. And my wife is a theater actress in New York City. And so she works evenings and weekends when she has a show. When she's rehearsing, it's like 12 hours a day. And when there's an audition, it's tomorrow at 11 and you have to be there. It can't get rescheduled. So she has much less control over her time. So we've relied really on my work flexibility, kind of like what you're talking about. And sometimes it's really hard, especially when kids are young. But, I look back and I'm like, wow, I had this great opportunity that most dads don't get, and so it's really been a gift to me to be able to be as involved a dad as I've been. And I really wish that my wish for dads is that, every dad can feel like, they've been really involved through their kids' lives. And that takes different shapes for every family. But, to look back on your kid's childhood and know that they know that you were there and you were a fun, loving presence in their lives, that's really what we want.
Like, my bottom line was, like, when she's out of school for the summer and she'll be like, hey, you want to go to a ball game today on a Tuesday? I'll be like, okay. Yeah. Afternoon game, let's go.
Yeah, no, that's you're right. You're right on it, man.
Beautiful. Scott, what's your next book?
After this year, the book has been all-consuming. I can't even think about that at the moment. No, but I think my next book would be written for supervisors and managers on kind of managing work-family issues from their point of view. So how do you set up a workplace that could be flexible, but you still kind of know what people are doing, and how you can work with your employees to help them meet their family needs, but also be, again, really productive employees.
Because you got to think, as awareness for working dads is progressing, that workplaces that recognize it and give flexibility and leeway are going to be way more attractive than the old standard, old boy, rigid network, right? Absolutely.
And the evidence is getting there, and most big companies get it. Like, they understand, hey, this is important. We're going to lose, we're better able to attract and hold on to really good people if we offer these things and become a more family-friendly employer. They recognize it. Now they don't know exactly how to implement it. But so that's where they are right now. They kind of they recognize this is an important issue. We're starting to grapple with it, but they're not quite there yet. And in fact, one of the things that has come from this book is that I've been able to work in a handful of companies already, and I've had a couple of workshops with managers and employees about how do we move from awareness to doing something about it.
All right, now last two to close it out. Now, your son is a gymnast. Are you and the wife already saving for an Olympic trip down the line?
Oh God, I hope not. I mean, honestly, I love my son. He's so into it. He's really good at it. Which I don't want to sound braggy, but it's nice when a kid can do something and get real self-esteem from it, because it's not like, yay, everybody gets a trophy. But the thing is, it's starting to take over my life. And, they said this summer, if he wants to stay on track, it has to go 3 days a week.
There you go.
2 hours, so it's 6 hours of instruction a week, but it's like, an hour there and back. So now we're looking at 9 hours a week on this. And I don't know. I mean, I want to support him. But I also want to make sure it's more important for me that he has a normal childhood and has friends and interests than that he gets on a Wheaties box or something one day. So, we'll have to make some decisions at some point because I'm not willing to, have my son's entire, childhood and teenage years taken over by one thing.
Now, see, that's a healthy attitude to have, whereas that a good chunk of the parents at the gymnastics class or school are like, it's happening. Olympics 2024. Come on, baby.
Yeah. No, again, yes. I
keep cutting those checks. Third mortgage. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Gymnastics is not cheap. So
it's crazy because there's like very little equipment besides like the actual gymnastics equipment. I mean, it's not like football or hockey.
That's true. There's not a lot of personal equipment, but the equipment is expensive. And then also, traveling to tournaments and stuff gets pricey. But yeah, there's not a lot of personal equipment. Although the uniforms, I was shocked by how much they charge us for uniforms. So,
I don't even know.
Which I was like, no, come on, we pay enough here, but I guess not. Also, it's funny. The gym is in this very it's funny. It's in this little industrial park tucked away by a train line, but it's in Chappaqua, New York, which is very like hoity-toity rich Westchester. In fact, the Clintons have their house in Chappaqua, and we're not those people. We're driving from a very, a very different kind of place to get to this gym. But I think a lot of the rest of the clientele there are just, richer people for whom, money is not really an object. And that's not us. I mean, I make a nice salary. My wife, gets good gigs and all. But, it's something
you're pulling up in the Toyota with the parking lot full of Audis.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. And of course, there are these Audi, sport utility vehicles, the giant ones that take up like 2 parking spots and everything. So, yeah, which kind of annoy me. But anyway.
All right. Last one, then we'll get you out of here. Giants or Jets?
I'm a Jets fan, unfortunately. I chose poorly as a child.
Now, have you impressed this upon your son?
No. In fact, it's funny. My son is and has to be a New York sports fan.
Yeah.
But, so I'm a Knicks fan and a Yankees fan as well. And, my son is on board with those. But I told him he could choose his own football team as long as it's not the Patriots or Dolphins. Because I do not want to inflict Jets fandom on him.
In a couple of years, he'll get that rebellious teenage phase. He'll show up in a Celtics jersey, a Patriots hat, and I don't know, some sort of Red Sox parka.
Well, it's funny. My in-laws are all from Boston, and so we have these arguments all the time. They like when he was little, they would buy him like Patriots onesies, and I'm like, he's not wearing this, and
he's as a spit bib.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But it's funny, and the whole Deflategate thing has been a point of consternation with my in-laws.
It's finally good that you can goose them on something.
Yeah, they're the level of success the Patriots have had is really something. But it's funny because I'm not even a hardliner on it. I mean, listen, whatever's bad for the Patriots, I'm happy about. But I really think the league went considerably overboard with this whole thing. And I even told them that, but that's not good enough to satisfy them. They're like, no, we need to clear Tom Brady's name and we need to sue the NFL. And Tom Brady is the greatest person who's ever lived. And I'm like, calm down, people. He's just a man,
Well, hopefully Geno can step it up for you this year.
Oh God. I really think that, Buffalo and the Jets, if they just had a league average quarterback, they'd be fantastic teams. I think Minnesota's getting there. I think, Bridgewater's.
We love Teddy here.
I think Teddy's turning into a really good quarterback. And, I think we have the rest of the team. We just don't have the quarterback.
Well, I think after the Christian Ponder era, we were kind of owed one.
Yeah, you really went through a tough stretch of QB play there.
Yeah. All right, so that's wrapping up NFL talk. Scott, hey, thank you so much for coming on the Dad Mode podcast, and thanks for dropping knowledge. The book is The Working Dad Survival Guide, How to Succeed at Work and at Home. Get it on Amazon. It'll all be in the show notes. The blog is fathersworkandfamily.com. Dr. Scott Behson, at Scott Behson, Behson on the Twitter machine. Hey, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, man.
And like we mentioned, The Working Dad Survival Guide, How to Succeed at Work and at Home, available on Amazon. And you know what you can do to help both Scott and myself out? Click on the Dad Mode's Amazon link, top left corner of dadmodepod.com. It will take you to Amazon through our link. Bookmark that and just order everything you want. All of the Scott Behson books that you want, and maybe a couple more expensive items. Maybe a couple Xboxes or a couple, I don't know, what are the kids playing nowadays? PlayStation 9s? Something like that, or some iPads. Order some high-end stuff that you're going to buy anyways through our Amazon link, and we'll get a little taste. The Dad Mode ship will keep on going forward. But we're out of here. Show's available iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, pretty much everywhere. And follow me on Twitter at DadModePod or my personal account at Andy Carlson Show. The website, dadmodepod.com. Be a man, be a father, go Dad Mode. See you next time.
Think the episode you just heard is worth $1? Well, send it our way. Visit dadmodepod.com/support to find out how. Be a man, be a father. Go Dad Mode. The music is created and produced by Deeb. To hear more of his tracks, visit soundcloud.com/Deeb.